Marcus Chen had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan, infiltrated drug cartels from Miami to Seattle, and stared down the barrel of more guns than he could count. But nothing had prepared him for the surreal terror of being held at gunpoint in his own driveway on a Tuesday evening in suburban Virginia. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The blue and red lights had appeared out of nowhere, splashing across his newly renovated colonial home like some twisted disco ball. Marcus had just stepped out of his black Dodge Charger, his ATF-issued vehicle, still wearing his work clothes, khakis and a navy polo that stretched across his broad shoulders. His hand was on the mailbox when he heard the voice. "Freeze! Hands where I can see them." Marcus's training kicked in immediately. His hands shot up, fingers splayed, his body going statue still. But his mind was racing. He'd been reaching for his mail, in his own driveway, the driveway he'd shoveled last winter, the driveway where his daughter had learned to ride her bike. "Turn around, slowly." Marcus complied, his movements deliberate and measured. The officer was young, mid-20s maybe, with that fresh-from-the-academy eagerness that could get people killed. His service weapon was drawn, held in the textbook two-handed grip they taught at the range, but his hands were shaking. Just slightly. Just enough. "What's your name?" the officer barked, his voice cracking on the last word. "Marcus Chen. I live here. This is my house." Marcus kept his voice calm, authoritative but not threatening. He de-escalated dozens of volatile situations in his 12 years with the ATF. He could handle this. "ID. Now. Slowly." "My identification is in my right front pocket. I'm going to reach for it slowly with my right hand. My left hand will remain visible." Marcus narrated his movements like he was defusing a bomb. In a way, he was. The officer's weapon tracked his every movement. Marcus could see the man's trigger finger, indexed along the frame, not on the trigger itself. Good, at least he had that much training. But the barrel never wavered from center mass. As Marcus's fingers closed around his wallet, a voice called out from across the street. "Marcus, what's going on?" It was Helen Kowalski, his neighbor of 5 years, standing on her porch with a watering can in her hand. "Ma'am, get back inside," the officer shouted, his attention splitting for just a second. "That's Marcus Chen. He lives there. What are you doing?" Helen's voice rose with indignation. But the officer wasn't listening. His eyes were locked on Marcus again, on the wallet emerging from his pocket. "Drop it on the ground. Kick it toward me." Marcus's jaw clenched. This was humiliating, degrading. He was a federal agent, for God's sake. He'd taken down weapons traffickers, busted illegal firearms operations, testified before Congress, and here he was being treated like a common criminal in his own front yard while his neighbors watched. He dropped the wallet. It hit the asphalt with a soft thud. He kicked it forward with his loafer, watching it slide across the concrete toward the officer's polished black shoes. The officer crouched, keeping his weapon trained on Marcus, while his free hand fumbled for the wallet. This was the moment everything would change. Or so Marcus hoped. The officer's hand trembled as he flipped open the leather wallet. Marcus watched the man's face, reading every micro-expression like it was a suspect's interrogation. First, confusion. The officer's eyebrows drew together, his eyes narrowing. Then, recognition. Then, something Marcus had seen too many times in his career, the dawning horror of a catastrophic mistake. "Sir, the officer started, his voice deflating like a punctured tire. "Keep the gun on me," Marcus said flatly. "You started this. Finish your investigation." The officer's face flushed crimson, visible even in the strobing blue and red lights. His weapon lowered slightly, then jerked back up as if he'd remembered his training. But the conviction was gone. He was just going through the motions now. Inside the wallet, Marcus's credentials told a story. Special Agent Marcus Chen, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Beneath the badge, his military ID from his Army Ranger days, his concealed carry permit, his Department of Defense clearance card, the business card from the FBI director he'd worked with on the Richmond gun trafficking case. Agent Chen, I sincerely apologize. I received a call about a suspicious person. Suspicious. Marcus let the word hang in the air like cordite. What exactly was suspicious? Me getting my mail? Me standing in my own driveway? Me being black in a nice neighborhood? Sir, that's not... I wasn't... The officer was drowning now, grasping for any lifeline that would pull him out of the hole he'd dug. What's your name, officer? Dawson. Officer Kyle Dawson, Fairfax County Police. Marcus committed it to memory. He committed everything to memory. The badge number visible on his Dawson's uniform, 2847. The unit number on the patrol car, 3 Adam 12. The exact time on his watch, 7:47 p.m. The witnesses, Helen was still on her porch, and he could see curtains moving in windows up and down the street. Officer Dawson, I'm going to lower my hands now. Yes, sir. Of course, sir. Marcus's arms dropped slowly, and the blood rushed back into his shoulders with a pins and needles sensation. He'd been holding them up for nearly 5 minutes. He rolled his shoulders back, and Dawson flinched at the movement. Relax, officer. I'm not going to hurt you. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. A second patrol car pulled up, and Marcus's stomach sank. This was escalating instead of de-escalating. The new arrival was older, a sergeant, judging by the stripes. He emerged from his vehicle with the measured calm of someone who'd worked thousands of calls. What we've got, Dawson, the sergeant called out, his hand resting on his own weapon, but not drawing it. Sergeant Morrison, there's been a mistake. Dawson's voice cracked again. This is Special Agent Marcus Chen with ATF. He lives here. Morrison's expression went through the same transformation Dawson's had. Confusion, recognition, concern. But Morrison was a professional. He approached Marcus directly, his posture apologetic but not subservient. Agent Chen, I'm Sergeant David Morrison. Can we talk? Sure. In my house. On my terms. Morrison nodded. That's fair. Marcus walked toward his front door, his back to both officers. It was a calculated risk, a power move that reasserted his authority. If they were going to shoot him, they'd have done it already. But he could feel their eyes on him, heavy as lead, as he climbed his porch steps. The front door opened before he reached it. His wife Sarah stood in the doorway, her face pale, her phone clutched in her hand. Behind her, their 8-year-old daughter Jasmine peeked around her mother's legs, eyes wide with fear. Daddy? That single word broke something in Marcus's chest. His daughter had just watched her father held at gunpoint, in their driveway, at their home, the one place that was supposed to be safe. It's okay, baby girl. Just a misunderstanding. The lie tasted like ashes in his mouth. The tension in Marcus's living room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Sergeant Morrison sat on the edge of the leather sofa, his hat in his hands, while Officer Dawson stood near the doorway like he wanted to bolt. Marcus had sent Sarah and Jasmine upstairs, but he could hear his wife's muffled voice on the phone, probably calling her sister, or maybe their lawyer. Smart woman. Marcus remained standing, arms crossed, his athletic frame casting a long shadow in the lamplight. He'd spent the last 3 minutes listening to Morrison's explanation, and his anger was building with each word. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Marcus said, his voice dangerously calm. Someone called 911 to report a suspicious black male in this driveway, my driveway, and your department responded by sending an officer who drew his weapon on me within 30 seconds of arrival. Morrison shifted uncomfortably. Agent Chen, I understand your frustration, but do you understand? Marcus leaned forward. Do you understand what it's like to explain to your 8-year-old daughter why police officers pointed a gun at her daddy? Do you understand what it's like to be a federal law enforcement agent who spent 12 years protecting this country only to be treated like a criminal in your own home? Dawson spoke up from the doorway, his voice barely above a whisper. Sir, I was following protocol. The call came in as a possible burglary in progress. A neighbor reported seeing someone casing the house. Casing? Marcus let out a bitter laugh. I was checking my mailbox. I've lived here for 5 years. 5 years, Officer Dawson. I've coached Little League in this neighborhood. I've hosted the neighborhood watch meetings. But apparently none of that matters because I'm black and this is a nice neighborhood. Morrison held up a hand. Agent Chen, we're not making excuses. What happened here was unacceptable. But I need you to understand the situation we're facing. Gun violence is up 30% in this county. We've had 3 home invasions in the last month. Our officers are on high alert.
And I'm an ATF agent who deals with gun violence every single day, Marcus shot back. I've seized more illegal firearms than your entire department combined. I know the stats. I know the threats. But I also know racial profiling when I see it. He walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. His neighbor, Tom Henderson, was washing his car across the street, had been for the past hour. Tom was white, roughly the same age, same build, but no one had called the cops on Tom. Who made the call? Marcus asked. Morrison hesitated. We can't disclose that information. Can't or won't? Marcus turned back to face them. Because I'm going to find out. I'm going to file a formal complaint. I'm going to request body camera footage. I'm going to make sure this gets investigated properly. That's your right, Morrison agreed. And for what it's worth, I support that. What happened here isn't who we are as a department. Isn't it? Marcus challenged. How many times has this happened in this county? How many black men have been stopped, questioned, detained for the crime of existing in the wrong neighborhood? Dawson finally found his voice. Agent Chen, I swear I didn't see race. I saw a potential threat. I saw someone who matched the description from the call. What description? Marcus's eyes narrowed. Black male, approximately 6 feet tall, athletic build? That describes millions of men. Did the caller mention what I was wearing? Did they mention my vehicle? Did they mention anything specific? Or did they just see a black face and assume criminal? The silence that followed was answer enough. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Marcus glanced at the ceiling, thinking of his daughter, probably listening to every word. He thought about the talk he'd have to have with her now, the talk every black parent had to have eventually, the talk about being careful, being compliant, being twice as good just to be seen as equal. I called Malcolm, Sarah said finally. Malcolm Chen, Marcus's older brother, was a civil rights attorney in D.C. I've already drafted a formal complaint. He says we should consider going public. Marcus tightened his jaw. I don't want to be a media spectacle. And I don't want to live in a neighborhood where someone can call the police on my husband for existing. Sarah's eyes flashed with anger. We need to know who made that call, Marcus. Was it the Hendersons, the Johnsons, someone we invite over for barbecues? The thought had been gnawing at him since Morrison left. One of his neighbors, someone he'd smiled at, waved to, maybe even helped with yard work, had looked at him and seen a threat, had picked up the phone and potentially set in motion a chain of events that could have ended his life. Can I see Daddy now? They both turned to find Jasmine halfway down the stairs, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She'd gotten that rabbit when she was 3, and it had been through everything with her. First day of kindergarten, her grandmother's funeral, every nightmare and fever. Now it was coming to terms with police guns. Marcus sat down on the couch and patted the spot next to him. Come here, baby girl. Jasmine ran to him, burrowing into his side. Why did those policemen point guns at you? Did you do something bad? And there it was, the question that broke his heart. His 8-year-old daughter asking if her father, a federal agent, a veteran, a man who dedicated his life to protecting others, had done something to deserve being held at gunpoint. No, sweetheart, I didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes people make mistakes. The police officer made a mistake tonight. But why? How did he explain institutional racism to an 8-year-old? How did he explain implicit bias, the weaponization of 911 calls, the long history of violence against black bodies. How did he shatter her innocence while still keeping her safe? Sometimes people see what they expect to see instead of what's really there, he said carefully. That police officer expected to see a bad guy, so when he saw me, that's what he thought he saw. But he was wrong. Because you're a good guy. That's right, baby. I'm a good guy. And I'm a police officer too, just a different kind. I work for the federal government, remember? I help keep people safe. Jasmine was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, are we safe? The question hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Sarah's hand found his, squeezing tight. Yes, Marcus said firmly. We're safe. I promise. But even as he said it, he wondered if it was true. Could any of us truly be safe when the color of his skin made him a target, when coming home from work could turn into a life-or-death situation? His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out to find a text from his supervisor at the ATF. Heard what happened. Need to talk. Call me ASAP. Word was spreading. Of course it was. In law enforcement circles, news traveled fast. By morning, everyone in his office would know. By afternoon, it would be in the system, a formal incident report that would follow him forever. Another text came through. This one from James Rodriguez, his partner. Bro, are you okay? This is insane. Then another from his old army buddy stationed at the Pentagon. Just heard, what can I do? His phone kept buzzing. Messages of support, offers of help, expressions of outrage. His tribe rallying around him. But beneath the support, he could sense the unspoken truth they all knew. This could happen to any of them. Badge or no badge, uniform or no uniform. The color of their skin trumped everything else. Marcus barely slept that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of the confrontation in his mind. In the darkness, he could still see Officer Dawson shaking hands, still feel the cold dread that had settled in his stomach when he realized his daughter was watching from the window. At 5:30 a.m., he gave up on sleep and headed to his home office. If he couldn't rest, he could at least be productive. He opened his laptop and began documenting everything. Every detail, every word, every observation. In his line of work, documentation was everything. Evidence was everything. He had just finished typing up his account when his phone rang. Malcolm Chen, calling at an ungodly hour as usual. "You're up early," Marcus said by way of greeting. "I've been up for 2 hours reviewing Virginia case law." Malcolm's voice was all business. "We need to talk strategy. First question. Do you want to pursue this criminally, civilly, or both?" I rubbed my eyes. I want accountability. I want to make sure this doesn't happen to someone else.
Noble, but I need specifics. Are we talking a civil rights lawsuit, a formal complaint through internal affairs, a DOJ investigation, media campaign, all of the above? I don't want this to define me, Malcolm. I'm not an activist. I'm a federal agent. And you're also a black man who was held at gunpoint in his own driveway while his family watched. Malcolm's voice softened. Little brother, I get it. You spent your career being one of the good ones, proving yourself, playing by the rules. But sometimes the rules are rigged. Marcus heard footsteps on the stairs. Sarah appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee, and he mouthed a thank you. Let me think about it, Marcus told his brother. I need to talk to my supervisors first. See what the Bureau wants me to do. The Bureau is going to want you to keep quiet. They always do. Don't let them bury this. After hanging up, Marcus sipped his coffee and opened his work email. Sure enough, there was a message from his SAC, special agent in charge, requesting a meeting at 9 a.m. The subject line simply read, "Last night's incident." Already being sanitized, already being turned into an incident rather than what it really was. Racial profiling and excessive force. Sarah sat down across from him. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I need to find out who made that 911 call. Sarah's working on it. She filed a FOA request this morning. Of course he did. Malcolm was nothing if not efficient. At 8:45 a.m., Marcus pulled into the parking garage at the ATF field office in Arlington. He'd made this drive 1,000 times, but today it felt different. Today, he wasn't just Special Agent Chen. He was the black agent who'd been held at gunpoint in his own driveway while his family watched. James Rodriguez was waiting by his car, a Starbucks cup in each hand. "Figured you could use this." Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully. James had been his partner for 3 years. They'd worked dozens of cases together, from routine firearms trafficking to major cartel investigations. If anyone understood, it was James. "Did Morrison really draw down on you over a mailbox?" James asked as they walked toward the building. "Dawson drew. Morrison showed up later and tried to smooth things over." "Jesus," James shook his head. "You could have been killed." "I know." They rode the elevator in silence. The other agents who stepped on gave Marcus sympathetic looks, but no one said anything. What was there to say? Everyone in law enforcement knew the statistics. Everyone knew the risks. But no one wanted to acknowledge the uncomfortable truth that the biggest threat to officers of color sometimes came from their own colleagues. SAC Patricia Brennan was waiting in her office, along with 2 people Marcus didn't recognize. That was never a good sign. "Special Agent Chen," Brennan began, her tone carefully neutral. "This is Rebecca Howard from the Office of Professional Responsibility and Charles Grant from our legal department. We need to discuss last night's events." Marcus remained standing. "Am I under investigation?" "No, of course not," Brennan said quickly. "We're here to support you and to understand what happened so we can determine the appropriate response." "The appropriate response is to hold the Fairfax County Police Department accountable for racial profiling and excessive force." Grant, the lawyer, cleared his throat. "Special Agent Chen, we understand you're upset." "Upset?" Marcus's voice rose. "I was held at gunpoint in my own driveway while my 8-year-old daughter watched through the window. Upset doesn't begin to cover it." "Of course," Grant said smoothly. "What I meant was, we need to be strategic about how we handle this. The Bureau has relationships with local law enforcement that we need to maintain. We can't afford to burn bridges." And there it was, the real reason for this meeting. They wanted him to let it go, to be a team player, to sacrifice his dignity for the sake of bureaucratic harmony. "With all due respect," Marcus said coldly, "I don't give a damn about your bridges. I care about making sure Officer Dawson thinks twice before he points his weapon at another unarmed black man." Brennan leaned forward. "Marcus, no one is asking you to stay silent, but we need to handle this through proper channels. File a formal complaint, let Internal Affairs investigate, work within the system." "The system that allowed this to happen in the first place?" Howard, the OPR representative, spoke up for the first time. "A Special Agent Chen, I've reviewed hundreds of officer-involved incidents. If you go public with this, if you make noise, you'll be labeled a troublemaker. It will follow you for the rest of your career. Promotion boards will see it. Future assignments will be affected. Is that really what you want?" Marcus looked at each of them in turn. These were his colleagues, his supervisors, the people who were supposed to have his back, and they were more concerned about optics than justice. "What I want," Marcus said slowly, "is to live in a country where I can check my mail without getting a gun pointed at me. What I want is for my daughter to grow up without being terrified of the police. What I want is accountability. If that makes me a troublemaker, so be it." He turned and walked out of the office, leaving his career hanging in the balance. Marcus spent the next 2 days in a bureaucratic holding pattern. He'd been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Standard procedure, they said, nothing personal. But Marcus knew what it really meant. They were trying to control the narrative to keep him away from reporters and cameras while they figured out how to make this go away quietly. He was home when Malcolm finally called with news. "Got the 911 recording. You're not gonna like it." "Play it." Malcolm's voice was replaced by the tinny sound of the emergency dispatch recording. 911, what is your emergency? "Yes, hi. I want to report a suspicious person in my neighborhood." The caller's voice was female, older, with a precise diction that spoke of education and privilege. "What is the nature of the suspicious activity?" "There's a black man lurking around one of the houses on my street. He's been there for several minutes, looking in windows, trying doors. I think he might be trying to break in. Looking in windows? Trying doors? I walked from my car to my mailbox, a distance of maybe 20 feet.
Is this person armed? I can't tell, but he looks dangerous. Please send someone quickly. I'm frightened. The recording continued with the dispatcher taking down the address, Marcus's address, and assuring the caller that officers were en route. Then the line went dead. "Did you get the caller's name?" Marcus asked through gritted teeth. "Patricia Whitmore. Lives 3 houses down from you, the white colonial with the rose garden." Marcus knew exactly which house. He'd helped Patricia's husband, George, jumpstart his car last winter. Sarah had brought them cookies when they moved in. They'd voted for the same candidates in the Homeowners Association election. "She said I was trying doors," Marcus said numbly. "I walked to my mailbox. That's it. I walked to my own mailbox." "She lied," Malcolm said flatly. "The question is, did she knowingly lie, or did her bias make her see something that wasn't there? Does it matter? Legally, yes, but morally, you're right, it doesn't matter. Either way, her call nearly got you killed." Sarah was already pulling up Patricia Whitmore's Facebook page on her phone. The profile picture showed a smiling woman in her 60s with perfectly coiffed silver hair. Her recent posts were a mix of garden photos, Bible verses, and shares from conservative news sites with headlines about thugs and urban crime. "She's got a Blue Lives Matter banner on her profile," Sarah said, her voice dripping with irony. "All lives matter, apparently, except yours." Marcus felt a surge of anger so intense it nearly choked him. He'd lived 3 houses away from this woman for years. They'd exchanged pleasantries at neighborhood events, and the entire time, she'd been looking at him and seeing a threat. "I want to confront her." "Bad idea," Malcolm warned. "Let me handle this legally. We're building a case. False report, reckless endangerment, maybe even a hate crime enhancement." "She nearly got me killed, Malcolm. My daughter watched me held at gunpoint because this woman couldn't conceive of a black man legitimately living in her neighborhood. Which is why we need to be smart about this. You go over there angry, you give them ammunition. Aggressive black man threatens elderly white woman. You know how that story goes." Marcus knew. He'd seen it play out 100 times. The narrative was always the same. White victimhood, black aggression, justified fear. Never mind the facts, never mind the truth. But he couldn't just sit here and do nothing. That evening, Marcus stood in his driveway looking at Patricia Whitmore's house. The rose garden was immaculate, the lawn perfectly manicured. The American flag hanging from the porch was crisp and new. Everything about the property screamed respectability, tradition, wholesomeness. Everything except the woman inside who had weaponized 911 against her neighbor. Marcus started walking. Sarah called after him from the porch, "Marcus, don't!" But he kept going. 3 houses felt like 3 miles. Each step echoed with the weight of every black person who'd been profiled, suspected, criminalized for existing in the wrong place. He rang the doorbell. George Whitmore answered, his friendly smile faltering when he saw Marcus's expression. "Marcus, hey, I heard about... I'm sorry, that must have been... I need to speak with your wife. I'm not sure this is the best time. She called 911 on me. She told them I was trying to break into my own house. She lied, George. And because of her lies, I had a gun pointed at me in front of my daughter." George's face went pale. "Marcus, listen, Patricia was just trying to be a good neighbor. She's been worried about crime. I'm not crime. I'm your neighbor. I've lived here for 5 years, but your wife looked at me and saw a threat because of the color of my skin." Patricia appeared behind her husband.
her arms crossed defensively. "I did what I thought was right. If you just identified yourself." Identified myself? In my own driveway? At my own house? Why would I need to identify myself to you? You were acting suspicious. I was getting my mail. You were lurking. I was walking to my mailbox. Marcus's composure finally cracked. "I live here. This is my home. I pay my mortgage. I mow my lawn. I follow every rule, and it still doesn't matter because you look at me and see a threat." "I think you should leave," George said, stepping between them. "Your wife's lies almost got me killed. If I'd reached for my phone instead of showing my ID, if I'd made one wrong move, I'd be dead. Do you understand that? Your wife's phone call could have ended my life." Patricia's face hardened. "Well, maybe if people like you didn't commit so much crime." "People like me." Marcus laughed bitterly. "I'm a federal agent. I've served 3 tours in Afghanistan. I've dedicated my life to protecting this country. But sure, people like me are the problem." He turned and walked away before he said something he'd regret. Behind him, I heard Patricia's voice, shrill and defensive. "I have a right to call the police if I feel threatened." The right to feel threatened by a black man existing. The right to weaponize that fear. The right to potentially end a life and face no consequences. Marcus made it halfway home before the shaking started. The story broke 3 days later, and not because Marcus wanted it to. Someone had leaked the body cam footage, all 12 minutes of it, to the local news. By the time Marcus woke up Thursday morning, his driveway was surrounded by news vans. "You need to see this," Sarah said, handing him her phone. The video was everywhere. Every major news outlet, every social media platform, every corner of the internet. He watched himself on the small screen, hands raised, voice carefully controlled, while Officer Dawson's weapon tracked his every movement. The video had been viewed over 2 million times. The comments were predictable. "This is America. A federal agent can't even check his mail without getting a gun pulled on him. He should have just complied. Oh wait, he did, and still almost got shot. Where are the Blue Lives Matter people now? Or does that only apply when the victim isn't black?" This is a hoax. ATF agents don't live in neighborhoods like that.
And the worst one, with thousands of likes? If he just acted less threatening, this wouldn't have happened. Marcus's phone had been ringing nonstop. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, local stations, newspapers, podcasts, everyone wanted an interview. His ATF email was flooded with messages from colleagues, some supportive, others less so. And his personal cell had somehow been leaked, resulting in hundreds of texts from strangers ranging from heartfelt support to vile threats. "We need to make a statement," Malcolm said during their emergency family meeting in Marcus's living room. James Rodriguez was there too, along with Sarah's sister and Marcus's former Army commander, Colonel Jennifer Wright, who'd driven up from Fort Bragg as soon as she heard. "I don't want to be a symbol," Marcus said for the 100th time. "Too late," Colonel Wright said bluntly. "That video made you a symbol whether you like it or not. Now you get to decide what kind. Are you going to let other people control the narrative, or are you going to speak for yourself?" "The Bureau wants me to stay quiet." "Fuck the Bureau," Wright said. And coming from the dignified colonel, it carried extra weight. "I didn't train you to be a coward. I trained you to stand up for what's right." Marcus looked at his daughter, who was coloring quietly in the corner, but listening to every word. She'd barely spoken since that night, had nightmares every time she closed her eyes. That, more than anything, hardened his resolve. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll do a press conference, but I control the message. No sound bites, no edited clips. I want to tell the whole story." Malcolm grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that.
I've already reached out to no big law firm press conference. We do it here, in my driveway, the same driveway where this happened. Let them see the mailbox I was reaching for. Let them see the house where my daughter watched through the window. I like it, James said. It's powerful, authentic. They scheduled it for Saturday morning. That gave Marcus 2 days to prepare, 2 days to decide exactly what he wanted to say. Malcolm warned him that every word would be scrutinized, analyzed, weaponized by someone. But Marcus was done playing it safe. Saturday dawned gray and cold. Marcus dressed carefully in his ATF raid jacket, his shield clearly visible. Sarah had wanted him to wear a suit, more respectable, but Marcus disagreed. He was a federal agent. He wanted people to see that. By 10 a.m., his street was packed. News crews, neighbors, supporters holding signs, Justice for Agent Chen, and Black Lives Matter, and a disturbing number of counter-protesters holding Blue Lives Matter flags. Police were there too, ironically providing security. Marcus stepped out onto his porch, Sarah on one side, Jasmine on the other. The cameras surged forward like a living thing. Malcolm handed him a microphone. For a moment, Marcus couldn't speak. The wake of all those eyes, all that expectation pressed down on him. Then he felt Jasmine's small hand slip into his, and he found his voice. My name is Special Agent Marcus Chen. For 12 years, I've served as a federal law enforcement officer with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Before that, I served 3 tours in Afghanistan with the U.S. Army Rangers. I've dedicated my life to protecting and serving this country. He paused, looking directly at the cameras. I want to be clear about something. I don't hate police officers. I am a police officer. I know the dangers law enforcement faces. I know the split-second decisions officers have to make. But I also know that if I had been white, none of this would have happened. If I had been white, my neighbor wouldn't have seen a threat. If I had been white, Officer Dawson wouldn't have drawn his weapon. If I had been white, my daughter wouldn't have watched her father nearly get killed for the crime of coming home from work. The Rainer shouted a question, but Marcus held up his hand. I'm not here to answer questions. I'm here to tell the truth. The truth is that in America, black people are seen as threats first and citizens second. The truth is that no amount of education, military service, or federal badges can protect us from the assumptions people make about us based on skin color. The truth is that my 8-year-old daughter now has nightmares about police officers, and that breaks my heart. Because I am a police officer, and I want her to see law enforcement as protectors, not threats. He felt Sarah squeeze his shoulder. I want accountability. I want Officer Dawson to receive additional training in de-escalation and implicit bias. I want Patricia Whittemore, the neighbor who made the false 911 call, to understand the consequences of weaponizing law enforcement against black people. And I want every police department in this country to recognize that racial profiling isn't just unjust, it's deadly. He looked down at Jasmine, who was watching him with those wide, trusting eyes. My daughter can grow up in a country where she doesn't have to be afraid, where she can be proud of her father's service without being terrified that his skin color makes him a target. That's not too much to ask. That's just basic human dignity. He set down the microphone and walked back into his house, leaving the crowd erupting with questions behind him. The video of his speech went viral within hours, surpassing even the body cam footage in views. But Marcus didn't watch it. He spent the rest of the day with his family, trying to reclaim some semblance of normalcy. The week following Marcus's press conference felt like living in the eye of a hurricane. The story had exploded beyond local news into a national conversation about race, policing, and the limits of authority. Marcus's face was everywhere. Newspapers, television, social media. Some called him a hero. Others called him a race baiter, claiming he was exploiting the incident for attention. The ATF remained conspicuously silent. On Monday morning, Marcus received an email from Zach Brennan.
Report to my office immediately. James offered to come with him. Moral support, man. But Marcus declined. Whatever was coming, he needed to face it alone. Brennan's office felt colder than usual. She sat behind her desk, her expression unreadable, while Charles Grant from Legal stood by the window like a sentinel. Special Agent Chen, Brennan began formally, a bad sign. The press conference has created complications. Complications, Marcus repeated flatly. The Fairfax County Police Department has filed a formal grievance. They claim you've damaged their reputation and endangered officer safety by inflaming public sentiment against law enforcement. Marcus laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. They endangered my safety by pointing a gun at me for checking my mail. But I'm the problem? Grant stepped forward. The Bureau has a relationship with FCPD that goes back decades. Your very public accusations have strained that relationship. Good. Maybe they need to be uncomfortable. Maybe they need to actually address the systemic issues in their department instead of worrying about their reputation. Marcus, Brennan's voice softened slightly. I'm not your enemy here, but there are pressures. From the county, from the Bureau. There are people calling for your badge. The words hit like a physical blow. Marcus had given 12 years to the ATF. He put his life on the line countless times, and now they wanted to take his badge because he dared to speak the truth. Let me guess, Marcus said coldly. The Bureau wants me to issue an apology, walk back my statements, play nice with FCPD, prove I'm not one of the angry black men who make white people uncomfortable. The Bureau wants this situation resolved with minimal damage to interagency relationships. And what about the damage to me? To my family? Does that matter? Brennan stood up. You're not being fired, Marcus, but we're recommending a transfer. Fresh start, new office, away from the media spotlight. A transfer? Marcus felt his temper rising. So I'm the one being punished? I'm the one who has to leave? It's not punishment. It's practical. Your effectiveness here has been compromised. Every case you work will be scrutinized. Every arrest will be questioned. Defense attorneys will use this incident to challenge your credibility. Then let them. My credibility stands on 12 years of exemplary service. If defense attorneys want to claim I'm biased because I objected to having a gun pointed at me, that says more about the system than it does about me. Marcus. No. He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. I'm not transferring. I'm not apologizing. I'm not going to make this easy for anyone. If the Bureau wants to fire me for telling the truth, they can do it publicly and explain to the American people why a decorated federal agent lost his job for being the victim of racial profiling. He walked out, leaving Brennan and Grant staring after him. Outside the office, James was waiting with 2 cups of coffee and a knowing look. That bad?
They want me to transfer. Sweep it under the rug. You gonna do it? Marcus took the coffee and drank deeply. Hell no. Good man. They walked together toward the elevator. As the doors closed, James spoke quietly. For what it's worth, most of the agents in this office are behind you. We've been talking. If they push you out, a lot of us are prepared to make noise. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. You'd risk your careers for me? Your family, Marcus. We take care of our own. The solidarity meant more than Marcus could express. But he knew the reality. James and the others could offer support, but at the end of the day, Marcus was fighting this battle alone. That evening, Marcus returned home to find an unexpected visitor sitting on his porch. Officer Kyle Dawson, out of uniform, looking like he'd aged 10 years in a week. Marcus's first instinct was anger, but something in Dawson's posture, hunched, defeated, made him pause. What are you doing here? I needed to apologize. Really apologize, not the departmental statement our lawyers wrote. I need to look you in the eye and tell you how sorry I am. Marcus crossed his arms. I'm listening. Dawson stood up, his hands shaking. I've watched that body cam footage 100 times. I've replayed that night in my head over and over, and I keep seeing the same thing. You did everything right. You were calm, compliant, professional, and I still drew my weapon. I still treated you like a criminal. Because I'm black. Yes, Dawson's voice cracked. Yes, because you're black. Because when I got that 911 call about a suspicious black man, my brain made assumptions. I saw danger that wasn't there. I let my implicit bias override my training, and I almost killed a good man because of it. Marcus studied the young officer. The shame on his face seemed genuine, but Marcus had seen enough crocodile tears in interrogation rooms to be skeptical. What do you want from me? Forgiveness? Absolution? I don't deserve either of those things. I just wanted you to know that I'm doing the work. I've enrolled in implicit bias training. I'm seeing a therapist who specializes in racial trauma, not my trauma, yours. I'm reading, learning, trying to understand how my actions fit into a larger pattern of harm. That's commendable, Marcus said, and meant it. But it doesn't change what happened. It doesn't erase my daughter's nightmares. It doesn't undo the humiliation of being held at gunpoint in my own driveway. I know. Nothing can undo that. But I'm trying to make sure I never do it again, to you or to anyone else. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Dawson pulled something from his pocket, a letter, handwritten on notebook paper. I wrote this for your daughter, to Jasmine. It's an apology in words she might understand. You don't have to give it to her. But I wanted her to know that what she saw wasn't okay, that her daddy didn't do anything wrong, that I did. Marcus took the letter, not opening it. You should go. Dawson nodded and turned to leave. Then he stopped. For what it's worth, Agent Chen, I hope you don't lose your job over this. You spoke the truth. That takes more courage than I've shown. After Dawson left, Marcus sat on his porch steps and opened the letter. The handwriting was messy, like Dawson had written it in a rush of emotion. Dear Jasmine, my name is Officer Dawson. I'm the officer who scared you and your daddy. I made a very big mistake. I saw your daddy and thought he was doing something wrong, but he wasn't. He was just coming home from work. Your daddy is a hero. He helps keep people safe. I should have seen that. Instead, I was scared, and I made a bad choice. I'm sorry I scared you. I'm sorry I pointed a gun at your daddy. I'm sorry I made you afraid of police officers. We're supposed to help people, not hurt them. I promise I'm going to be better. I'm going to learn and grow so I never make this mistake again. Your daddy is a good man. You should be very proud of him. Sincerely, Officer Kyle Dawson. Marcus folded the letter carefully. It was a start. Not redemption, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. Sometimes that was enough. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it'll take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.